Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to EduSmart Studio. Today we are going to study 4 very important concepts in education, including test, measurement, assessment and evaluation. And this lecture is especially designed according to the syllabus of lecturer education and for the preparation of Headmaster or Headmistress examinations. Today we will understand the following terms in very simple and interesting way. So let's begin by understanding this concept through real life story first. Then we will move to the educational perspective so that everything become very easy to understand. Now imagine your health is not okay and you go to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor takes your blood and perform blood test. This process of collecting blood and performing blood test is called a test. The laboratory gives numerical reports. For example, your sugar level is 180. This is called measurement. And the doctor analyzes the reports and identifies or figure out the health problem. This is called assessment. Finally, the doctor says you have diabetes and need treatment. This is called evaluation. So students, the same process happens in the education too. Now let's discuss it from educational perspective and understand the concept. Now let's understand the first concept, test. Imagine a teacher completes a chapter in mathematics. After teaching, the teacher wants to know that the student understand the concept or not. So the teacher gives student a quiz. The quiz contains questions like addition, subtraction, fraction and multiplication. This quiz is called a test. Simply, a test is a tool or set of questions used to collect information about students' learning. It checks students' learning, collect information, measure knowledge or skills. In simple words, tests check what students have learned. Let's take another example. Suppose an English teacher teaches grammar and then gives fill in the blanks, essay writing, multiple choice questions. This classroom paper is also a test. Let's take another example. A computer instructor asks a learner to type 50 words. This practical activity is also a test because it checks typing skills of student. So student, always remember quiz, grammar test, multiple choice test, practical test or an oral test. All are the example of tests. In short, whenever a teacher checks your learning after teaching, that activity is called a test. So always remember mathematics quiz, grammar test, multiple choice test, practical test or oral test. All are example of tests. In short, whenever a teacher checks your learning or skills after teaching, that activity is called a test. Simply or in short, test collects information about students' learning. Now let's understand another important concept, measurement. Imagine a teacher checks students' mathematics quiz. After checking, the teacher gives marks to the students. For example, Fatima scored 18 out of 20 marks, Muhammad scored 15 out of 20 marks and Ahmad scored 10 marks out of 20. Now these marks show students' performance in numbers. This process is called measurement. Simply, measurement means giving numerical scores or marks to the students' performance. It gives marks or scores, shows performance in numbers or measure achievement quantitatively. In simple words, measurement tells performance in numbers. Let's take another example. Suppose a student runs 100 meters in 12 seconds. Here 12 seconds is measurement because performance is shown in number. Let's take another example. Suppose a student secured 85% in science and 90% in English. These percentages are also measurement. So always remember marks, percentages, grades and numerical scores. All these are example of measurement. In short, whenever students' performance is shown in numbers or quantities, that process is called measurement. Now let's move to the third concept, assessment. Assessment is deeper than testing and measurement. Assessment means analyzing students' learning, strengths and weaknesses. In simple words, Assessment helps teachers understand what students know, where they are strong and where they need improvement. For example, the teacher carefully checks the mathematics quiz and notices addition is correct, subtraction is also correct, but multiplication and division are wrong. Now the teacher understands the student is strong in addition and subtraction, but weak in multiplication and division. This analysis is called assessment, because now the teacher is studying strength and weaknesses of students. Let's take another example. An English teacher notices the student writes good grammar, but spelling mistakes are frequent. This understanding is assessment. Now let's take another example. A teacher observes classroom participation and notices a student answers questions correctly in written but hesitate during presentations. Again, this is assessment because the teacher is analyzing learning behavior. So always remember, classroom observation, quiz analysis, assignment reviews and skill assessment all are the example of assessment. In short, whenever teachers analyze strength, weaknesses and learning progress, that process is called assessment. Now let's understand the final concept, evaluation. Imagine a teacher checks tests, assignments, classroom participation and overall performance. After reviewing everything, the teacher finally says excellent performance, good progress or needs improvement. This final judgment is called evaluation. Simply, evaluation means making a final judgment or decision about performance. It gives final judgment, it helps in decision making, it evaluates overall performance. In simple words, evaluation tells how good or poor the performance is. Let's take another example. Let's take the example of a job interview. After observing skills and performance, the company says you are selected. This final judgment is evaluation. Let's take another example. A school principal observes a teacher's teaching and says your teaching performance is outstanding. This final opinion is evaluation. So always remember, evaluation includes final results, promotion decisions, job selections and performance reviews. All are the example of evaluation. In short, whenever a final decision or judgment is made about performance, that process is called evaluation. Now let's quickly revise all four concepts once again. Test collects information about students' learning. For example, a teacher gives a quiz after teaching a lesson, that is test. Measurement gives numerical scores or marks. For example, a student gets 18 out of 20 marks or 85%, that is measurement. And assessment identifies strength and weaknesses. For example, the teacher finds a student is strong in addition but weak in division, that is assessment. And evaluation makes the final judgment or decision. For example, the teacher says excellent performance or poor performance. This is evaluation. This is the complete teaching learning process. These are the terms which are used in teaching learning process. That is all for today's lecture. I hope you have understood the concept clearly. If you have any confusion, please drop your question in the comment section. If you've understood the concept, please like the video, share it with others and subscribe to EduSmart Studio for more easy to understand concept. Thank you for watching EduSmart Studio and Allah Hafiz.